Welcome to Love and Lies Audio, where we present the untold stories of love, lies, and life after betrayal. Every heartbreak has a voice, and this is theirs. I used to believe that betrayal only happened to other people. Colleagues snickering about adulteries, strangers confessing in dingy corner bars, or distant accounts that were some other person's tragedy. Not mine. Never mine. I thought I had done well. My wife wasn't perfect, but neither is anyone else. She was good to me, warm when she wanted to be, intelligent enough to keep me on my toes. We argued, naturally, but I always believed our foundation was firm. We'd braved relocations, changes in employment, losses, even some lean times of near poverty. We'd braved those hurricanes. I thought that signified we were stone solid. The only thing about betrayal is that it doesn't knock. It doesn't even ring the doorbell. It sneaks up on you. A chill of cold air, quiet and subtle, until the entire house is chilly and you can't even put your finger on where it started. I kept telling myself that I was being paranoid. Laughed at her phone too much, stayed out later at work, was irritated with me over small things, things that used to make her smile. She got new clothes and went out, wore perfume more often, kept her hair styled even on days off. I wanted to believe that she was just taking better care of herself, that she was growing into her own person, but my instincts knew otherwise, and the gut doesn't lie. That evening that I knew for certain, I wished that I could erase from my memory. I had come home from work a little early, rain dripping down my jacket, intent on surprising her with dinner from her favorite restaurant. I was hoping to shock us both out of whatever funk we were in. I moved quietly up the stairs, noticing muffled music spilling from the other side of the bedroom door. It was not unusual for her to have something playing while she showered or washed dishes. It was the muted hum of voices that was odd. My hand cramped on the doorknob. I wished I had turned and fled, faked not hearing it. But some part of me knew that reality was waiting sharp and nasty, just this side of that thin line of wood. I pushed it open, and my world shattered. There she was, in bed. Sheets tangled, her hair spilling over the pillow, and next to her, not just some man, not some anonymous stranger, but one I recognized, whom I'd had a beer with, whom'd eaten at my table, my best friend. They both looked up, stunned. She gasped, throwing the blanket across her chest like modesty mattered now. He grinned. That grin branded me. It wasn't shame. It wasn't guilt. It was arrogance, like he had won something that I didn't even realize I was battling for. My blood ran cold. Everything in me howled to howl, to shatter, to tear the world apart. But I didn't. My throat closed, my chest tightened, and all that came out was nothing. I closed the door, walked away, and that's when I knew what my revenge would be. Not screaming, not fighting, not pleading, not even excusing. I would ignore her, not passive-aggressively, not through sulking or tantrums. Just nothing. Nothing. The next days were a sort of surreal theater. She came home, waiting for me to blow, to question her, to demand an apology. I didn't. I didn't even care where she'd been. I didn't put her in her place about what I saw. Ate my meals, went to work, went to the gym, started dressing more nicely, smiled at strangers. I was a ghost in her world, with her, but unapproachable. The silence unsettled her. She was okay to begin with. Made dinner, asked me about my day. I gave short, calm answers. Nothing more. And then she tried to provoke me, issuing tiny jabs, hoping I'd take the bait. I didn't. My serenity infuriated her, because quiet, when war should come, feels like poison. She'd snuggle into bed beside me at night, and I'd turn over. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't melodramatic. I was just elsewhere. My body there, my spirit not. And she knew. She started asking questions. Are you okay? Did I do something? Talk to me. I'd half smile and say, I'm okay. Nothing else. The silence was my advantage. My revenge was not a flashy boom. It was the silent storm that made her question everything. Weeks passed, and she began to fall apart. She spent all day at home, clinging to me as if I were air, and she couldn't breathe unless I was there. She vowed to cook my favorite meals, to schedule nights out we hadn't shared in months. She giggled at my jokes too loudly, bumped into my arm too often, begged with her eyes for something I wouldn't give. Validation. But I'd withdrawn it, and she seethed. I could see her spiraling out of control. Her phone was face down now. She erased messages, screened calls, and went out of her way to appear innocent. But it was too late. The seed of doubt had grown into a forest. What she didn't know was that the silence was not indifference, it was transformation. Inside, I was seething, hurting, dying, but outside, I was untouchable. She longed for the man she'd hurt. She longed for the attention, the warmth, the companionship, and all she got was quiet. It was elegant revenge, really, because it made her live with herself. Each smile I gave some other person, each late night I came home without say, each text I wrote with a quiet smile on my face, all of it left her guessing. Is he over her? Does he have any clue? Did he find someone else? The irony was, I didn't need someone else. My silence was lover enough. My silence filled the room, pressed upon her chest, choked her on the guilt that she thought she could bury. The first time she cried in front of me, I almost broke. She stood in the kitchen, quivering in her hands, and was saying, "Please, just talk to me. Tell me what I did wrong." I glared at her. I remembered that night, her dirty hair, his smirking face, the betrayal that left me hollow. And instead of screaming, I gave her the gentlest response I could. "You already know." And I just turned and walked away. Her sobs followed me down the hallway behind, but I did not stop. I did not comfort. I did not calm. Because she had chosen, and now she would have to live with its ripple. Weeks became weeks. The silent treatment was my new skill. I was good at it. I started running in the mornings, filling my lungs with fresh air. I bought new clothes, nothing extravagant, but sharper, cleaner. I smiled at work more, took pride in small victories, reunited with friends she never liked. She noticed it all, and with every step ahead that I took, she fell further and further behind. I saw it in her eyes. The regret, the panic, the realization that her affair was no fling. It was a choice that had cost her everything, and she couldn't make it go away. She tried. God, she tried. She left notes on the counter, tiny apologies disguised as excuses. She prepared meals she hadn't consumed in years. She begged for sex, conversation, attention. She clung to me like a ghost. But I kept quiet. Silence was not revenge. It was justice. The problem with silence is that it's not absence, it's presence. A heavy, suffocating presence that fills every room, sits at every table, and ghosts every word that is never spoken. Silence is not nothing, it's everything, boiled down to the crushing weight of what could be said but never will be. And that was the scene I created for her. She'd wake up each morning to the sound of me moving through the house, steady, calm, deliberate. No slammed doors, no arguments, no desperate questions. Just the rhythm of a man living his life, separate from the woman who had once been his everything. It frightened her more than any screaming would have. The initial cracks appeared about 3 weeks into my silence. She was at the sink, washing dishes, as I walked by her to retrieve my keys. She turned, suds streaming from her hands, her eyes scouring my face for something. Anger, forgiveness, something to provide her with some clue as to where she stood. Instead, I offered her nothing. Her voice cracked. "Can't you just yell at me? Please. Anything's better than this." I waited just long enough for her to expect that I would say something. Then I slipped on my shoes and left without a word. As the door closed behind me, I heard it, the sound of glass breaking. A plate hurled against the tiles, her first tantrum, and it was beautiful. But silence was not merely a matter of not talking to her. It was a matter of change. I was not going to be the broken man she thought I would be. I would not break. No, I stood up straight. I assaulted the gym like never before. Sweat was my therapy. Each push-up, each mile, each lift was a declaration. I am not destroyed. I am being rebuilt. I started dressing differently. Not for her, but to help me remember I was still desirable. Still a man who could walk into any room and command respect. And I started smiling again, but not at her. At strangers, at coworkers, at waitresses who poured my coffee and asked about my day. Whenever I smiled at another person, her face tightened, and I could see the storm brewing inside of her. Because regret isn't built by punishment, it's built by realization. And she was beginning to realize just what she had lost. One night, she made another attempt. I was sitting on the couch in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when she slipped onto the couch beside me. Her hand trembled as she placed it on my thigh. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I looked down at her hand, then back at the screen, like she was background noise. She gripped harder, begging, "Please, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll do anything." The words "I'll do anything" would have been satisfying. Long ago, I would have killed for her to admit fault, to hear her beg. But no more. Now it was pathetic. I gently took her hand, set it down, and stood. No shouting, no argument, just silence. Her cries followed me down the hallway. Again, and I smiled in the dark. That's when I realized my silence wasn't just admonishment. It was vengeance. Because she wasn't just living with guilt, she was living with invisibility. She'd become irrelevant in the very life she thought she possessed. And the more I ignored her, the more desperate she became. The next stage was public regret. We went to a party of a friend during the weekend. She had insisted that we attend together, maybe wanting to show the world that all was well. But all was not well, and I made sure to allow people to feel it. I didn't hold on to her like I used to. I didn't hold her hand or refer to her as my wife. I mingled. I made jokes. I told jokes. I got people laughing with me, my voice echoing through the room. She stood in the corner, drinking wine too quickly, her eyes flicking to me with that artificial smile women wear when they're trying not to show panic. One time, a woman, alone, brash, touched my arm as she laughed at a joke I'd told. It was nothing, harmless party chatter, but my wife's face went white. That night, she didn't even try to touch me in bed. She remained stiff on her side, silent now, like the gun I had held all along. It was poetic. Weeks turned into months. My silence became a habit. She did everything she could. Cooking elaborate dinners, wearing the perfume she wore on our first date, buying lingerie, leaving love notes in my bag, even planning a weekend getaway, which I declined with a casual, "I have plans." She never asked what the plans were, because she was afraid of the answer. The truth was, my plans were simple: to keep existing without her. Not leaving, not divorcing, not screaming, just living and letting her see. The most powerful moment came one evening in our kitchen. She stood, holding a photo album she had dug out of the closet. Our wedding pictures. Our smiles captured in time, untainted by betrayal. She placed it on the table in front of me, her eyes welling up with tears. "Look at us. Look at what we had. Doesn't it mean anything to you?" I looked down at the photo. Her in white, me in black, our faces aglow with love I thought would never fade. And then I looked up at her, my voice flat, even, but sharp enough to cut. "You killed that man. You killed that version of me. Whatever you think you see in those pictures doesn't exist any longer." Her sob was so bare it came close to tearing me apart. Almost. But I said nothing. And that was the night I knew she would never remember the silence. Because the thing is, betrayal doesn't end when the affair ends. It echoes. And my silence was the megaphone. Every time I walked by her without speaking, she heard her own guilt screaming in her head. Every time I smiled at someone else, she felt the pit she had dug herself. And the longer I neglected her, the more she understood. She had let go of a man who would have done anything for her, and now she was nothing more than a ghost in his story. I wasn't simply punishing her. I was having her pay the price of betrayal. And I made damn certain she regretted every goddamn choice. I can still remember the day I noticed the change in her eyes, the very slight hesitation that was not there. It was so small at first, a flinch of nervousness behind her eyes, the kind which betrays guilt even when verbal efforts are made to hide it. I was so accustomed to my own silence, the armor that had wrapped around me following her betrayal, that I noticed every slight variation in her behavior. She tried, subtly, to re-winning the same attention she had previously so easily commanded. An offhand text, a lingering glance, a laugh too loud in a room where I now existed as a ghost, not as a lover. Each one tickled me like a whispering wind, soft, but charged with an unbearable weight. And each time, I denied it. I had learned the art of invisibility to her, not due to lack of interest, but as a skill honed through months of intentional restraint. It began with her appearing in the places that I had habitually frequented. I would frequent a coffee house or a remote bookstore, seeking isolation, seeking solitude that I had worked hard to build for myself. And then she'd arrive, as if she could materialize anywhere I might be, her smile pasteboard, her eyes seeking approval. I never granted it to her. My gaze would be distant, my attention absorbed in books or the buzz of the surroundings, and I reveled inwardly in the knowledge that she would leave without having ever penetrated the hedge I'd constructed. Her messages increased in frequency, in entreaty. She attempted all, apology, flirting, pleading. Each "I'm sorry" was answered with silence. Each acknowledgement of remorse shed the armor I had so carefully built of my pain. She didn't know it, but my silent triumph was that I held the reins of the game. She could scream, plead, play games, and yet she couldn't reach me. I had become ungettable. There were evenings when the memories gnawed back at me, times when her laughter or the ghost of her hand could have killed me. I'd wake up in the dark, going through rehearsals of fights wherein I shouted out her betrayals, wherein she crumbled under me. But life was infinitely stronger, infinitely better. Quiet. Letting her see me win, letting her see me rise without her cut short, that was my revenge. I looked at more of the world, new cities, new faces. She saw me in passing, most often through friends, most often through social media snapshots of a life she could no longer touch. Each photograph, each anecdote I shared was a blade sharpened not out of spite but out of hard self-regard. She was left with the bitter pill to swallow that my betrayal hadn't broken me. It had toughened me, made a man of me whom she could no longer control. She had caught up to me one evening in a small cafe, the smell of espresso mixing with our tension. Her eyes were rimmed red, voice trembling with rage and despair. "Why won't you talk to me? One conversation, I promise that's all I want." I looked at her calmly, a slow, deliberate intake of breath. "You had your conversation. You made your choice." Her fingers shook, almost imperceptibly, showing the terror burning within her. "I was wrong. I didn't mean to." "You didn't merely make a mistake," I told her softly but firmly. "You did it on purpose, betrayed all the trust that I had put in you, and that can't be undone." She moved closer, and I did not flinch. All my senses were screaming at me to run, to pull her into a fight, to plead with her to listen. But I had found more deeply than desire or need. I had found the power of absence, the strength of unbending boundaries. My broken heart now controlled her guilt and my own peace of mind. Over time, her attempts grew more intense. She attended parties where I was the center of attention, sought to be included in my group of friends, sought to arouse memories of intimacy we had known. And with each of these endeavors, I met her intrusion with polite composure, nothing more. The hurt of her presence was hers to endure. She saw me smile, laugh, engage, and learned that I not only survived her treachery, but flourished. There were moments when I noticed flashes of her desperation, subdued, gazing into the void where I had once been emotionally present. She would inquire of mutual acquaintances about me, try to decode my answers, probe for weakness, but I gave nothing back. My growth was not a facade, it was authentic. My life no longer revolved around her whims. I had taken the pain she inflicted and turned it into fuel for my own growth. One evening, several months since the betrayal, I was alone with her in a subdued, low-lit pub. I was there to meet up with friends for a beer, and she just appeared like a specter from a part of my life I had worked hard to keep from my current one. Her voice was barely audible, shuddering with desperation. "Please, I must explain. I must be forgiven." I sipped my drink, eyes hard, unwavering. "Forgiveness is not my job anymore," I answered slowly. "Whatever you are searching for, you will have to find in yourself. I am not the person who will apologize for your mistakes anymore." Tears rained down on her face, and she was barely whispering, "I can't lose you. I can't live like this without you." "Already lost me," I said, calm and resolute. "I'm here, but not for you. You don't get to have me back." She lurched, trembling step backward, understanding the irrevocability of her loss. And in that moment, a chill silence descended upon me. Not satisfaction, unadulterated, unshakable peace attending reclaiming your life. I had turned betrayal into liberty. Every tear she cried, every supplication she made, evidence not to her grasp of me, but to its absence. She no longer could manipulate, no longer could seduce, no longer could recover what she had discarded. I embraced my new existence in the days that followed. My days began with sun-kissed runs on empty streets, my evenings with laughter and camaraderie that was no longer tinged with her shadow. Every part of my life was filled with self-respect, every step measured, a reflection of the man I was now. And then the final, inescapable confrontation. She waited outside my door, unsteady, fragile, but persistent. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll show you." I opened the door calmly, standing before her with direct stare, and allowed the silence to lead between us. a canyon built of months of measured estrangement. The words I said next were deliberate, unyielding, irreversible. Never. You will never. I am done. You have nothing to offer me but memory and regret. I will never be yours. I never will be again. Leave me alone. She staggered, shock and grief etched on her face. I released her, knowing that this time she understood fully. No excuses, no replay, no middle ground. She had lost me forever. By myself in my apartment, I felt a release greater than any retaliation would have provided. I had not demeaned her, nor had I destroyed her. I had done something so much greater. I had been true to myself, my peace, my dignity. I had shown, first to me and then to her, that life after betrayal was richer, stronger, more beautiful than I had ever known before. Then the lack of her presence wasn't sad. It was liberating. I pursued hobbies I had set aside, traveled to destinations I had dreamed of, and formed connections with people who valued honesty, loyalty, and genuineness. She lingered in my mind, a ghost of the life I did not lead anymore, and each day confirmed the ultimate truth. Her infidelity was not prison, but catalyst. In the end, she was a lesson, a reminder that lost trust can never be regained, but power, self-respect, and satisfaction can be built out of its wreckage. I didn't seek revenge by destruction. I sought it by transformation, and it was more devastating than anything that she could ever have imagined. Every glance she sent in my direction, every use of my name, every apology that passed from her lips met with the same adamant response: silence. The icy, total silence of a man who had reclaimed his life. I prospered. I loved myself with fervor. I pursued happiness with stubborn determination. And the final revenge of all was the fact that she could never reclaim what I had become. Her apology, her regret, her presence, nothing. I was out of reach, out of shaking, and completely free. And in freedom, I discovered the greatest, unshatterable truth. The ultimate revenge is not revenge. It is life, lived fiercely, fully, without those who have harmed you. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. If your life has proven you loyal, betrayed, or resilient to others who might not understand, leave your tale in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Love and Lies Audio, where every story reminds us silence doesn't mean defeat, and quiet endings can be the loudest victories.